Indeed, just a quick visit, Vera had said 3 weeks ago. Helena glanced at the calendar on her kitchen wall, where she had been discreetly marking each day of her mother-in-law's stay with small red dots, 21 dots, 21 days of scrutinizing glances, passive-aggressive comments, and the unmistakable feeling of being under constant surveillance. Helena stirred her coffee slowly, watching the steam rise in delicate curls as the morning sun filtered through the blinds. From the guest room, she could hear Vera's footsteps, always so purposeful, never hesitant. The sound of certainty. Helena envied that. "Good morning, dear." Vera appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her perfectly pressed blouse and slacks, not a silver hair out of place. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," Helena admitted, forcing a smile. "Again, have you tried the herbal tea I suggested? Or perhaps..." Vera's eyes narrowed slightly. "Perhaps there's something weighing on your mind." Helena felt a chill run down her spine despite the warm mug in her hands. It was the way Vera said it, as though she knew exactly what kept Helena awake at night. "Just work stress," Helena lied. Vera nodded, unconvinced. "I made an appointment with Dr. Martin for Anthony. That lingering cough of his concerns me." Helena froze. "When did Anthony develop a cough?" "Yesterday afternoon, while you were at your yoga class." The pause before yoga class was subtle but unmistakable. Helena had indeed gone to yoga after stopping at a jewelry store to pick up a surprise anniversary gift for Anthony. She hadn't mentioned the detour to anyone. "He mentioned feeling better this morning," Helena replied carefully. "Mothers notice things," Vera said, pouring herself coffee. "Speaking of noticing things, that new red dress you bought last week, quite daring for a corporate dinner, isn't it?" Helena's hand trembled slightly, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the mug's rim. The red dress hung in her closet with the tag still attached. She had purchased it on her lunch break, alone, using cash specifically to avoid it appearing on their joint credit card statement. How could Vera possibly know? "I haven't decided if I'm wearing it yet," Helena managed. At least you didn't pay full price. 50% off is quite a bargain." Vera smiled thinly. "Though $89.99 still seems steep for such minimal fabric." The exact price, the exact discount. Helena felt her heart pounding against her ribs. "Is everything all right, dear? You look pale." Vera's concern seemed genuine, which somehow made it more unsettling. "Fine," Helena whispered. "Just fine." The front door opened, and Anthony's voice called out, "I'm back with breakfast." Relief flooded through Helena. She needed her husband's presence, his buffer between her and Vera's unsettling omniscience. Anthony entered the kitchen, grocery bags in hand, his handsome face brightening at the sight of them. At 35, he still had the same boyish charm that had drawn Helena to him 8 years ago. "And are my two favorite women getting along as usual?" he asked cheerfully, kissing his mother's cheek, then Helena's lips. "Of course," Vera beamed. "Helena and I were just discussing her shopping habits." Anthony laughed, unpacking bagels and cream cheese. "Mom, don't tell me you're criticizing Helena's wardrobe again." "Not criticizing, darling, observing." Vera helped arrange breakfast. "And I was telling Helena how proud I am that she's maintained her friendship with Jennifer, despite what happened in March. Loyalty is so rare these days." Helena dropped a spoon with a clatter. Jennifer was her college roommate. They'd had lunch together in March after not speaking for years. They'd argued bitterly, reconciling only 2 weeks ago via private messages. Helena hadn't told anyone about the reconciliation, not even Anthony. "And what happened in March?" Anthony asked, confused. "Oh," Vera backtracked smoothly, "perhaps I'm mistaken. Senior moments, you know." But her eyes, meeting Helena's across the kitchen island, held no confusion, only calculation. That night, As Anthony slept peacefully beside her, Helena stared at the ceiling, a terrible certainty forming in her mind. There was only one explanation for Vera's impossible knowledge. She was being watched. Helena gripped her cell phone tightly, ducking into the master bathroom and locking the door behind her. She turned on the shower to mask her voice, a habit she'd developed over the past week. "Rachel, I swear she knows things nobody could possibly know," Helena whispered urgently to her closest friend. "Yesterday, she mentioned the exact amount in my secret savings account, down to the cents." "That's impossible," Rachel said. "You opened that account before you even met Anthony." "Exactly," Helena's voice trembled. "And last night, she casually brought up that art gallery I visited when I told everyone I was working late. The one with that painter you had a crush on in college." "Yes," Helena hissed, checking the door again. "I paid cash for the catalog. I threw away the receipt in a public trash can outside." "There's no digital trail." A soft knock on the bathroom door made Helena jump, her phone nearly slipping from her sweaty palm. "Helena, dear," Vera's honeyed voice penetrated the door. "Your shower has been running for 15 minutes. Is everything all right?" Helena's eyes darted to the shower, steam now billowing across the bathroom. Just washing my hair. Out in a minute." "Take your time. By the way, Rachel sends her love. You two haven't spoken since Tuesday, have you?" The blood drained from Helena's face. She hadn't told anyone about calling Rachel, and she deleted the call history immediately afterward. "How thoughtful," Helena managed, hearing Vera's footsteps retreat down the hallway. "Did you hear that?" Helena whispered into the phone, terror evident in her voice. "This is beyond creepy," Rachel admitted. "What does Anthony say?" "He thinks I'm being paranoid. Says his mother is just observant and intuitive." Helena sank onto the edge of the bathtub. "But I need proof. I need to catch her somehow." "Then set a trap," Rachel suggested. "Feed her false information and see if she takes the bait." That evening, while preparing dinner with Anthony, Helena casually mentioned plans for the weekend. I might drive up to Lake Westwood on Saturday," she said loudly enough for Vera, who was arranging flowers nearby, to overhear. "Remember that adorable cabin we saw online?" "Lake Westwood?" Anthony frowned. "I thought that place was closed for renovation." Helena squeezed his arm meaningfully. "No, honey, you're thinking of another place. I made a reservation for lunch at that waterfront restaurant, the Blue Heron." Anthony opened his mouth to protest. There was no such restaurant, but Helena silenced him with a pleading look. "How lovely," Vera commented, trimming rose stems with surgical precision. "The weather should be perfect for a lakeside lunch." That night, Helena whispered the truth to Anthony as they lay in bed. "There's no Lake Westwood, no cabin, no restaurant called the Blue Heron," she explained. "I made it all up to test your mother." Anthony sighed, running his hand through his dark hair. "Helena, this is getting out of hand. My mother isn't spying on you." "Then how does she know everything about me? Things I've never told anyone, not even you." "She's very perceptive," Anthony insisted, but doubt crept into his voice. "Just wait," Helena said. "If she mentions Lake Westwood or the Blue Heron in the next few days, you'll know I'm right." 3 days passed without incident. Helena began to wonder if perhaps she was being paranoid after all. Maybe Vera's knowledge was just a series of lucky guesses and coincidences. On the 4th day, Helena returned from work to find Vera sitting in the living room, flipping through a glossy travel magazine. "How was your day, dear?" Vera asked, her reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. "Busy but productive," Helena answered, setting down her purse. "Such a shame about the Blue Heron," Vera remarked, turning a page. Helena froze mid-motion. "What?" "The restaurant at Lake Westwood, the one you had a reservation at for Saturday." Vera looked up innocently. "I was just reading that it suffered a kitchen fire last night." "All reservations cancelled through the end of the month." The magazine in Vera's hands was about European destinations. "How tragic," Helena said, her voice hollow. "I hadn't heard." "I took the liberty of making alternative arrangements," Vera continued smoothly. "A charming place called Riverdale Inn. I hope you don't mind." "Not at all," Helena whispered, her suspicions confirmed beyond any doubt. When Anthony returned home, Helena dragged him to their bedroom, shutting the door firmly behind them. "She mentioned the Blue Heron," Helena said, her eyes wild. "She talked about Lake Westwood, places I invented." That's not possible," Anthony stammered, his certainty finally crumbling. "It gets worse," Helena continued, pacing frantically. "She made a reservation at another restaurant for us, one that actually exists. I checked online. Riverdale Inn is real, and they do have a reservation under our name for Saturday at 1 p.m. Anthony sank onto the bed, his face ashen. "But how could she possibly—" "Don't you see?" Helena knelt before him, grasping his hands. "Someone is feeding her information. Someone is watching us. The question is, who? We're being watched," Helena whispered, her lips barely moving as she and Anthony strolled through the farmer's market on Sunday morning. They had left Vera at home, claiming they needed groceries, but really seeking a moment of privacy. Anthony squeezed her hand, his eyes scanning the bustling crowd. "It sounds crazy, but after what happened with Lake Westwood, I don't know what to believe anymore." "We need to be strategic," Helena said, pretending to examine a display of heirloom tomatoes. "From now on, we only speak freely outside the house. No phones. Nothing electronic." "You think our phones are compromised?" Anthony asked, his voice dropping even lower. "I don't know," Helena admitted, the fear evident in her eyes. "But someone is feeding your mother information, specific, private information." A vendor approached with samples, and they fell silent, accepting small pieces of cheese with forced smiles. When the man moved away, Anthony leaned closer to Helena. "What's our next move?" "I've already started," Helena said. "I've changed all my passwords. I've checked the house for hidden cameras. I've even examined my car for tracking devices. And nothing, which terrifies me even more." She selected a bell pepper, turning it over in her hands. "And if someone's watching us, they're good at covering their tracks." That afternoon, Helena opened her laptop at the kitchen table, making sure Vera could see the screen from where she watered plants by the window. With deliberate keystrokes, Helena navigated to a travel website, searching for weekend getaways to Palm Springs. She lingered on luxury spa packages, even placing one in her cart before closing the browser without completing the purchase. "Planning a trip?" Vera asked, misting a fern with practiced precision. "Just browsing," Helena replied casually. "Palm Springs has some amazing spa deals this time of year," Vera hummed non-committally. "The desert heat can be overwhelming. I prefer the coast myself." That evening, Helena pulled Anthony into the garage under the pretense of helping with recycling. "I searched for Palm Springs deliberately," she explained hurriedly. "And let's see if she mentions it." Anthony nodded, his face drawn with worry. "Helena, this is changing how I see my own mother. I've never known her to be manipulative like this." "You've never been married before," Helena pointed out. "Maybe this is how she handled your previous girlfriends too." "There's something else," Anthony said, lowering his voice further. "I found Mom on the phone yesterday when she thought I was in the shower. She hung up immediately when I walked in." Helena's pulse quickened. "Did you hear what she was saying?" "Just fragments. Something about confirmation. And, as we suspected. When I asked who she was talking to, she said it was her gardening club." Helena laughed bitterly. "Does her gardening club know about my non-existent reservation at the Blue Heron too?" The next morning, Helena left for work early, but instead of driving to her office, she parked down the street from their house. She slumped in her seat, large sunglasses hiding her face, and waited. 40 minutes later, her patience was rewarded when Vera emerged, dressed not in her usual house clothes, but in a tailored pantsuit, her silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon. Helena followed at a safe distance as Vera drove across town to an upscale coffee shop, heart hammering against her ribs. Helena parked and watched from her car as Vera took a seat on the patio. 5 minutes later, a man in a crisp button-down shirt and dark pants joined her. He appeared to be in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the straight-backed posture of someone with military or law enforcement background. Vera handed him an envelope. The man nodded, tucking it inside his jacket. Helena fumbled for her phone, zooming in to take photos of the exchange. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the device. When Vera left 30 minutes later, Helena remained frozen in her car, staring at the mysterious man who continued drinking his coffee, occasionally checking his watch. Eventually, he too departed, walking to a nondescript sedan parked down the block. Helena tried to steady her breathing as she drove to work, arriving nearly 2 hours late. Her assistant's concerned questions barely registered as she locked herself in her office, spreading the photos on her desk like pieces of an ominous puzzle. That night, Helena claimed a headache and went to bed early, but sleep was the furthest thing from her mind. The moment she heard Anthony and Vera's muffled voices downstairs, she slipped out of bed and crept toward the guest room. Her heart pounded so loudly, she feared it might alert the entire household as she eased open Vera's door. The immaculate guest room smelled of Vera's signature lavender perfume. Helena moved methodically, checking drawers and closets, finding nothing unusual until she noticed the expensive handbag Vera always kept close. Hidden in an inner pocket, she discovered a small notebook. With shaking hands, Helena opened it, having to stifle a gasp at what she found: detailed notes on her daily schedule, observations about her spending habits, a list of her friends with annotations. Rachel, potential confidant, speaks to H weekly. Copies of text messages Helena had sent to Anthony, a receipt from the jewelry store where she'd bought Anthony's anniversary gift. But most disturbing of all was a business card paper-clipped to the final page: Maxwell Investigations Discretion Guaranteed. Thomas Maxwell, private investigator. The face of the man from the coffee shop stared back at her from a small professional photo on the card. Helena sank to the floor, the evidence clutched to her chest as the terrible truth crystallized. Her mother-in-law had hired a detective to spy on her. But why? What could Vera possibly hope to find? Footsteps on the stairs jolted Helena back to the present danger. Quickly, she photographed the notebook's contents, returned everything to its place, and slipped out of the room, just as Vera reached the top of the stairs. "Helena!" Vera called, seeing her in the hallway. "I thought you were resting." "Just getting some water," Helena lied, her voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Oh, good night, Vera." "Sleep well, dear," Vera replied with a smile that now seemed predatory. "Tomorrow is another day." Helena barely slept, the images from Vera's notebook flashing behind her eyelids whenever she closed her eyes. By dawn, she had formulated a plan. She needed irrefutable evidence to show Anthony, something his mother couldn't explain away with clever lies. "You look exhausted," Anthony commented over breakfast, concern etching lines around his eyes. "Migraine kept me up," Helena replied, avoiding Vera's scrutinizing gaze from across the table. "Perhaps you're working too hard," Vera suggested, stirring honey into her tea with measured precision. "Stress manifests in the body in mysterious ways." "I'm fine," Helena insisted, checking her watch. "Actually, I need to leave early today. Big presentation." This was a lie. She had called in sick the moment she'd woken up. A real destination was Maxwell Investigations. The detective agency occupied a nondescript office above a dry cleaner in a commercial district 20 minutes from downtown. Helena parked several blocks away and donned large sunglasses and a baseball cap before approaching the building. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she climbed the stairs, rehearsing her cover story. The reception area was empty except for a middle-aged woman typing at a computer. "But may I help you?" the receptionist asked. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Maxwell regarding—" Helena lowered her voice. "A personal matter." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent." Helena removed her sunglasses, allowing genuine distress to show in her eyes. "Please tell him it concerns Vera and Anthony." The receptionist studied her face, then nodded and disappeared through a door. Minutes later, Thomas Maxwell himself emerged, the same man from the coffee shop. "How can I help you, Ms.?" His expression revealed nothing. "Johnson," Helena lied. "Emily Johnson. May we speak privately?" Maxwell gestured toward his office, a Spartan space with filing cabinets and credentials framed on the walls. The window blinds were partially closed, casting striped shadows across the room. "I understand you're working for Vera," Helena stated the moment the door closed. Maxwell's face remained impassive. "I'm afraid client confidentiality prevents me from—" "She hired you to investigate me." Helena leaned forward. "I've seen you together. I've seen your business card in her possession." A flicker of surprise crossed Maxwell's features before his professional mask returned. "Miss Johnson, I suggest you speak directly with the party in question about any concerns." "So you don't deny it," Helena pressed. Maxwell sighed, folding his hands on his desk. "What exactly do you want from me?" "The truth. Why is she investigating me?" "What has she asked you to find?" "Even if I were investigating you, which I neither confirm nor deny, I wouldn't discuss another client's objectives." Helena reached into her purse and placed $500 bills on the desk. "I need to know what she's looking for." Maxwell glanced at the money, but didn't touch it. "That's not how this works." "Then how about this?" Helena took out her phone, displaying the photos she'd taken of him meeting Vera. "I wonder what your other clients would think about your discretion guaranteed if these appeared online." Maxwell's jaw tightened. For several seconds, neither spoke. "Mrs. Bennett believes you're hiding something," he finally said. "Something that could hurt her son." "That's absurd," Helena protested. "I love Anthony." "She thinks you have financial secrets, possibly another relationship." Helena laughed bitterly. "The only thing I've hidden from Anthony is the anniversary gift I bought him last month." Maxwell's expression changed subtly. "There's more. She believes you're not who you claim to be." Ice filled Helena's veins. "What does that mean?" "Your background, your history before meeting Anthony." Maxwell hesitated. "She asked me to conduct a deep investigation into your past." "And?" Helena whispered, suddenly afraid. "None. I found inconsistencies." Maxwell opened a drawer and removed a thin file. "Your employment history has gaps. Your college records were harder to verify than they should have been, and your family—" "Don't!" Helena warned, her voice cracking. "Your supposed hometown has no record of your family ever living there." Helena's fingernails dug into her palms. "You had no right to dig into my life." "It's what I was paid to do," Maxwell replied evenly. "And Mrs. Bennett was very interested in what I found." "What exactly did you tell her?" Maxwell studied Helena's face. "Everything, including what I discovered about the river 15 years ago." The room seemed to tilt around Helena. "You told her about the river." That night, after another tense dinner filled with half-spoken accusations and lingering silences, Helena found herself alone in the quiet of the study. Unable to shake the creeping dread, she retrieved the photographs and documents she'd secretly collected from Vera's notebook. As her eyes scanned over the damning evidence, one file in particular forced her breath to catch: a faded hospital record and a police report detailing a tragic car accident from 15 years ago. The report spoke of two sisters, Helena and her twin, Elise, whose car had skidded off a rain-slicked road, plunging both into a raging river. Only Helena had survived. In that heart-stopping moment, memories long buried surged forth, the desperate, futile attempts to save Elise as the current swept her away, the shattering sound of twisting metal, and the silence that followed as her sister was lost forever beneath the water. Helena had carried that guilt like a secret scar, hidden from everyone, even Anthony, whose love had once been her solace. Now, with Vera's investigation laid bare before her, Helena realized that her guilt had been the silent architect of every fearful, secretive moment in her life. Determined to free herself from the crushing weight of her past, Helena resolved to reveal the truth. That very evening, with trembling hands and a voice heavy with regret, she invited Anthony to the study. As the soft lamplight flickered across her tear-streaked face, she began, "Anthony, there's something I've kept hidden for too long, something that has haunted me every day of my life. 15 years ago, I was in a car accident. I was with my twin, Elise. We fell into the river and I couldn't save her. I survived. And every day since, the guilt of not being able to save her has consumed me. I've kept this secret because I was afraid that if you knew, you'd see me as broken, as someone defined by tragedy." Anthony's eyes widened in shock and sorrow as he absorbed the confession. The air between them vibrated with raw emotion, a mingling of disbelief, pity, and a deep, abiding love for the woman who had carried such unbearable pain in silence. Before Anthony could speak, the soft knock on the study door revealed Thomas Maxwell, the private investigator whose involvement had set this chain of revelations in motion. With a measured tone, he confirmed the details Helena had feared most. "Your past, Helena, is documented beyond doubt. The records show the accident, the loss of your twin sister Elise. I understand this is deeply personal, and I'm sorry it had to come to light this way." At that moment, a figure emerged from the dim corridor, Vera. Her eyes, usually so cool and calculating, now betrayed a profound sorrow. "Helena," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft, "I knew about Elise all along. I've watched you hide behind this wall of secrecy and guilt, and I thought that by exposing your past, I could force you to confront the pain that has been poisoning your life. I never intended to hurt you, but to make you see that the past must be faced if you are to move forward." Anthony, still reeling from the confession, stepped closer to Helena. His hand reached out, trembling as it cupped her cheek. "I wish you had trusted me with this burden," he whispered. "But I see now that you were afraid of losing the love we share because of a tragedy you could never undo." In that fragile moment of vulnerability, Helena's guilt transformed into a painful yet liberating truth. With Anthony's reassurance, she allowed herself to weep openly, the years of hidden grief and unspoken remorse finally finding voice. Vera, too, seemed diminished by the revelation. Her own need to control the narrative now replaced by a quiet remorse. As the three stood in the soft glow of the study's light, the tangled threads of past and present began to unravel. Anthony's gentle words, "We'll face this together," every dark memory and every lingering regret, marked the beginning of a tentative healing. Helena knew that forgiveness of herself and, in time, from others, would be a long and winding path. But with the truth out in the open, a new chapter was possible, one built on honesty, compassion, and the promise of redemption.